Well, as you know, this is the second time that we're running a course in Israel. And what I usually like to do is do a kind of a pre-course interview with some of you, talking about what you heard about Israel, why you're going, the negative and positive.
One of the students that went the first year, he was a dual degree major as well, and he recommended going because he said it was a really good experience.
In my internship this semester, I've worked at a Catholic relief organization that works a lot in the West Bank and Gaza. And we worked a little bit on Israel-Palestine issues, so my interest in that has grown through that.
When I was undergrad, I had chance to study on Israel extensively. I was on American Studies program in DC, and we interviewed many different groups, like Israeli groups, Palestinian groups, and peace groups. So it was a really good experience.
I actually traveled to Israel at a very, very young age, so I don't really remember. So I think as a political science student, it should be interesting.
In my undergraduate, I minored in Middle Eastern Studies, and so it's more of a passion for the country itself and just interest in what goes on over there. I think it'll be a good experience, and I've never been to the Middle East, so that'll be new.
I love to travel, and I needed 3 more credits for my undergraduate degree. I saw the flyer, and I said, should I stay in South Orange and do 3 credits at Seton Hall, or should I go to the Middle East? I've been wanting to go to the Middle East for years, and I find it fascinating.
I thought that Israel would be a very interesting trip. I heard a lot of good things about it. I'm really just looking forward to learning more about the political system, learning from the students, just learning everything I can, just kind of absorb all the information, specifically from the people that live there.
I like to go into traveling with a really open mind, trying to clear stereotypes and what you read in the press and everything, because you never really know till you go.
Reading the news, it almost seems, I don't want to say terrifying, but it's definitely different from life over here. And so I'm interested in seeing if it's as tense as the newspapers make it out to be, and exactly what the conflict looks like for people who actually live there.
I'm interested in something that came up in the news a few months ago. It was about a nationwide PR campaign. Israel is telling all of its citizens to go out and spread the good news about Israel, that we're a good nation and that there aren't many bad things about us. Each citizen was given a pamphlet of good things to say about Israel. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'd like to see if that was true and that wasn't just U.S. press talking about a very small subject.
In my opinion, American media is a bit biased. So I think that it should be interesting seeing what's really going on over there and if it is really the way they say it is, whereas no Israeli and Palestinians get along together. So
I also want to see if, the peace process, what's really holding it up? Is it the government? Is it the Palestinians, Israelis? Because over here I think we have a biased view of what's holding it up. So I want to go and figure it out myself, what actually is holding up the peace process.
I think what I remember most was the way that the 4 different civilizations lived right next to each other. You had the Armenians, the Jews, the Muslims, the Catholics. They all their different quarters right there. Each civilization holds that area to be sacred for different reasons.
If you wanted to study coexistence, you should take a look at Jerusalem because there are so many different people living there, so many people of different religions and beliefs coming together and having to share this city.
Just 3 religions coexist and hopefully peacefully,
going into Jerusalem, I'm not sure if I was in touch with my religious side. And once you get there, there's this holy feeling. Even if you're not religious, just seeing all that history, it just comes at you.
Jerusalem is rich in history, and just to experience the culture in Jerusalem, which was slightly different in every area that we visited.
We were always venturing somewhere or going into some sort of either very historic or very archaeological site.
I really enjoyed all the historical tours and looking at the old city and Hezekiah's tunnel.
I remember just grabbing those glow sticks and wading through Hezekiah's tunnel and feeling like a soldier did thousands of years ago when they were invading Jerusalem. It was the only place in the world that I've ever felt like Indiana Jones every single hour of the day.
So it was kind of the start of a very enlightening tour.
I think there's so many emotions that you realize you have that maybe back here at home you don't really think about religion as much.
Well, that was interesting because at the time I didn't know why people were backing up and walking backwards. And they're bumping into us, of course, because they can't see that we are walking forward. You don't turn your back toward the wall. That is actually a memorable experience for me because one of the prayers that I put in the wall was for my mother's girlfriend, and she passed away recently. I felt very good putting that prayer in the wall. So.
You know, the Beersheba and Negev area is the desert.
The desert was such an amazing place.
The desert is a very, very different way of living, and I would imagine a very, very different mindset.
I read, about Zionism and what people say is like provocative, it's like really dangerous ideas and it's disrupting other countries. But what I, saw there, it was more like pioneerism for me, irrigating the desert and try to make the place better and bloom.
It's interesting to see the way that people can build up in areas that people don't think they can be lived in.
So much of the work that they're doing down there is revolutionary. It's not really been looked at before. They're looking at new ways of, settling the desert. It's a relatively new field, and I thought that was good.
I think the most exciting thing for me was maybe the scientific side of the development of the Negev desert, how wastewater is used much more frequently than in other countries, and how desertification impacts the environment, and how sustainable buildings and developments are being made.
It was so interesting to see how these things work.
These are things you only see on the Discovery Channel, National Geographic, and it's cool seeing it in person.
I think it's interesting that David Ben Gurion was so interested in developing the Negev.
I think what I remember most was going to Ben Gurion's home and hearing about his personal history because he's an interesting guy.
It was like we went back in time and just seeing where he lived, what a humble person he was, how involved he was in politics, and then how he lived his life.
He was the prime minister, and then all of a sudden he decides he wants to go live in the development town and on a kibbutz and go and actually do the things that he was promoting as prime minister. And it was with a bunch of young people, so they were very surprised to have the prime minister come live with them. But he was very committed to his ideas, and he went and actually lived it.
I think that he would have been proud to see the development that has taken place.
Growing up in America, it's a capitalist country, and I'm okay with that. I embrace it. And then you go to these, kibbutz, and they talk about a lot of socialist ideas and sharing and living as a community and, sharing basic amenities and food and money. It forced me to kind of confront new ways of living and think about them and challenge the way that I perceive the world, looking at it from a different angle and saying, like, this could work, I understand where they're coming from, kind of. It was just very different. That was very eye-opening because when you talk about Israel, a lot of people talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Nobody really talks about the socioeconomic conflicts that are going on within the country itself. And it really came alive for me when we visited the Bedouin community.
You have the Bedouin community who is typically poor, typically very traditional in their beliefs, but that's changing.
When we did go to those developed Bedouin settlements, we were some of the first Americans these people have ever seen. And that's just mind-boggling because I feel like we're not that different from them.
One mayor in the Bedouin village, he is making the town better and building more schools.
The mayor of that town that we visited, the impact that he had, and especially with regards to education. He had opened a lot of schools and he had started a scholarship program for university.
So it was really hopeful, but on the other side, the school teacher, he showed that the disparity.
And we went to the town with the school that was struggling, and it was hard to find any leadership there.
Both sides show exactly what Israel is going through now.
So visiting the school and then actually visiting the towns, it just opened my eyes to a lot of different issues that Israel faces, seeing what work needs to be done there, how much work needs to be done there.
There are schools that are lacking in resources. There are cities that are lacking in resources.
Still there's hope, they're making better, not everyone, but some are modernizing. They are changing their lifestyles and they are striving to do better.
Maybe they don't have some of the luxuries that some of the modern countries do, but when we were talking to some of them, we were normal people and just humans in the world.
I think Tel Aviv just really illustrates, especially coming from Jerusalem, it really illustrates the differences that you can find in Israel. Whereas Jerusalem is a very religious city, it basically shuts down on Shabbat. Tel Aviv is a very modern city, secular, and there's not much difference from a European or American city.
The beaches are beautiful.
I really took advantage of the beach.
The people were really fun. The nightlife was great. And Tel Aviv is like, I guess, Israel's Miami.
The hotline for migrants and Jaffa Institute were amazing.
When we visited Jaffa and we went to the nonprofit Jaffa Institute, it was really nice to see just how many different nonprofits there are.
I just remember that part of our trip being so full of meeting people doing really impactful work.
I think that morning when we picked the cabbage and visited the Jaffa Institute and packed the boxes, that was really great, that we were able to do volunteer work when we were over there, and that work will actually mean something to Israelis.
I've never really been involved the way I feel we were involved in such a short time.
When we were in Tel Aviv and we visited the hotline for migrant workers, I feel like I learned a lot, and as someone who's interested in human rights, it was a very interesting experience.
The migrant workers district was kind of segregated from the rest of Tel Aviv.
That part of the city where the migrant workers live, hearing about the sort of struggles that they're facing, and the way Israel is handling its newly arrived refugees and those people who are seeking asylum, and then how so many of them get sent back.
We got to see a totally different world than what tourists see when they go to Tel Aviv. We actually saw parts of Tel Aviv that people who have been there multiple times have never seen.
Really, I think it was really important that it was part of the trip.
Israel is nothing like you can imagine. It's nothing like what you hear in the media. So get that out of your head.
You get a different impression of the country once you're there than you might from the news or from other sources, because it is such an interesting country and there's so many things that you can't get just from reading articles about the conflict.
And I was talking to a coworker the other day, and I told her I'd gone to Israel, and she was like, oh my gosh, was it dangerous? When you got the plane, was there a bomb? And I was like, no, that's not what at all it was like.
It's not a part of each citizen's everyday lives. They go on just like we do, and we have similar issues. And there are beautiful parts of this country that we often go to visit. Israel is no different.
And it's not what we read about in the newspapers every day. It's not all bad. There's so much more good in the country.
You can't base what you read in the news as what it's going to be like over there. You have to get over and actually experience it, see it for yourself.
It's really important to go see it for yourself and find out the way daily life works there and the way that daily life impacts politics, because that's very important.
I would recommend people to go and just experience what Israel is like, and they're just another people like us.
It's got this rich history, this rich culture.
It's great for people who love history. It's great for people who love the beach or recreational activities.
I loved Israel. I would go back anytime, any day. I even loved the sad parts of our trip, even getting a reality check of what really existed.
And if I could give advice to students on the next trip, it would definitely be to take advantage of being able to ask questions while you're on the trip and meeting with the representatives from different groups, because there are questions that I think of now that I wish I'd asked then.
We had traveled so much and learned so much from so many different people and heard so many different ideas and perspectives and opinions.
And it really opened my eyes. I think that's my catchphrase for the trip, is my eyes were opened.